Sidney's a trip, man. His real life, Sidney is worth studying. It's just a biography. He died young. What was it, like 39 or something? But he was a knight, and I like this. I think it was Ben Jonson said his face was spoiled by pimples. Okay, interesting little tidbit. So yeah, Sidney, he was this guy, and he was a knight, and he Elizabethan's court. He was a poet, but he was also a very high-born person. You know, his father's very wealthy, powerful, privileged. His mother, same thing, and so that made him destined to marry a powerful, wealthy, privileged woman, and there starts all the trouble. So he was a devout Protestant, and he wanted to bring back Protestantism everywhere, not just, you know, he would have eradicated Catholicism if he could have, you know. Yeah, he was in France during the Saint Bartholomew's Day massacres, where they just Catholics pretty much massacred the heck out of a bunch of Protestants, and he witnessed that. But anyway, he tried to elicit Elizabeth to get her to start a war on the continent of Europe and eradicate Catholicism. It didn't work. But anyway, he was an interesting fellow. He died in the most, just like almost embarrassing way. So they had this thing called, you know, the thigh armor that knights wore in battle. And he thought they're just so passé, so yesterday, so cliche. The new knights of these times don't have to wear those. They're too encumbering. They encumber your movement too much. So he took his off and promptly, hey, and promptly got wounded in the leg and laid around for, 27 days with gangrene and died slowly like that. I mean, I feel kind of the same way. Like, if I die, I want it to be worthwhile, you know, like, I don't know, in the service of the country or saving one of you guys or something like that. I don't want to like go to the grocery store at the wrong time on the wrong day and get COVID and die on something stupid like that, you know. I would at least like it not to be an accident, you know. Or just live until you're old enough to where, you know, go. But it would suck to do something stupid and die from your stupidity. that would suck. But anyway, let's read some of his sonnets. Somebody tell me, what are the two different types of sonnets? Tell me. Okay, so interesting enough, Sidney mostly wrote in Petrarchian or Italian sonnets. Astrophel and Stella is this long sonnet sequence, and some of them are spectacular. I mean, I think Shakespeare gets most of the credit for sonnets during this time period, but Sidney gives him a run for his money. It's maybe sacrilegious to say, but I think it's true. I think Sidney's a little better at some things, like the rhetorical, really ingenious rhetorical devices. But he is writing about unrequited love, of course. Whereas Spencer wrote about requited love. He wrote about, yeah, we're happy, you know, we got together and it all worked out and it's just going to be just happiness from here on out. Yeah. Which is, have you ever noticed good songs, like the best kind of songs, you know? They're come from a dark place, right? How about Adele? She's been hurt. Man, she's been wounded, Adele, right? Someday I'll find somebody like you. Rolling in the deep. We could have had it all, but you played it. Yeah, man. This comes from darkness. A lot of the greatest literature and songs and whatnot. And look, how about, I don't know if you guys like Alanis Morissette. That Jagged Little Pill album, she like went in and she had this terrible breakup. And so she went in, she owed the record company a record, and they were like, well, what do you want to do? And she said, well, I don't think I'd be able to do what I want to do. She said, what do you mean? She says, well, if I said what I want to say, it would just be too harsh and too rough and too you know, not publishable. And they said, no, we want to hear that. And she said, really? I said, yeah, yeah. So you go back and listen to the lyrics of any song on Jagged Little Pill, and it's like, I mean, it's pretty serious, but it made great music, right? So it's hard to write about wonderful things. You know, you wake up today, I'm just so damn happy. I think I'll write a poem about how happy I am. I'm just feel thrilled. No, it's normally like Edgar Allan Poe, you know, your wife is dying in the next room or something and you're rehearsing it and, oh, nevermore, right? Okay, so Astrophil is a artsy-fartsy way of saying star lover. Astrophil, he is a star lover and Stella is his star. It's kind of cringy today, right? But he's a star lover and Stella is his star. Now, Stella in Sidney's actual life is based on a real person. Her name is Penelope. I've always liked that name, Penelope. It's kind of cool. Penelope Rich, and she was of the Devereux dynasty, and she's very beautiful and somewhat high on the scale, social scale. She was offered to him to marry, and he rejected her. He spent the rest of his life regretting that decision. So Astrophil and Stella is a sonnet sequence based on that one decision that he made and regrets. Okay, let's read it. Loving in truth and fain in verse my love to show, that the dear she might take some pleasure of my pain. Pleasure might cause her read. Reading might make her know. Knowledge might pity win, and pity grace obtain. I sought fit words to paint the blackest of woe, studying inventions fine, her wits to entertain, oft turning others' leaves to see if thence would flow some fresh and fruitful showers upon my sunburned brain. But words came halting forth, wanting invention's stay. Invention, nature's child, fled, stepdame study blows. And others' feet still seemed but strangers in my way. Thus, great with child to speak, and helpless in my throes, biting my truant pen, beating myself for spite. Fool, said my muse to me, look in thy heart and write. What a great way to start off. So that sonnet is the entrance to the rest of the sequence. And that sonnet really sets up the idea. And the idea is this lament that I wish I could have, should have, would have. There was this love that I passed up on. You know, so life I would say is about moments. You're not going to remember most of them, but some moments are important. Some moments you'll remember forever. And it's specifically those moments where you do the wrong thing that you'll remember. It's that regret, it's that lament. And I think a big part of life is knowing when one of those moments is upon you. It's hard to do. How do you tell the difference between a regular day and a day that changes your life? I don't have an answer for that except the fact that maybe you should treat a greater number of them as if they're important. But it's kind of about knowing. This poem is about that. It's about the moment you didn't take the step. It's that moment that you wish you could go back and redo. This sonnet sequence is about that. This poem right here is about trying to express it. Now he says, look, if any of you guys have ever been writers, if you've written anything creative, a song, poem, a play, a short story, anything. The most horrific part of it is a blank white page. You just get filled with this sense of dread and sense of anxiety. Oh my, I'm not going to be able to do it. He says this, I knew love. I knew true love. True love. And you guys, I think that true love is pretty easy to tell. I mean, you know, and I think you can find true love multiple times in your life. But seeing somebody on the street and, oh, she's hot, that's not love. You know, love's something else. My mother, my mom told me, she said, I said, Mom, who's your greatest love? Was it Jack? That's my stepdad. No. My dad? No. Oh, it was your first husband? No. I ran out of people. She said it was a guy she had an affair with. She had his name. I know his name. And they both had families. She was a Air Force officer's pilot. He was a pilot. His wife, you know, he was gone at Vietnam all the time, and he was a jerk anyway. And so she had this affair with this guy, and she fell deeply in love with him. And she said that was the one, you know, that was the one. And she was just a real sad conversation because she said, yeah, that's. And I said, well, what happens? Well, we both had, you know, we chose our families instead of, you know, breaking everybody up and doing all that. And I said, wow. She said, yeah. And I said, well, what happened? I mean, she said he called her once a year, every year for the rest of her life, just to make sure she was okay. Wow. So true love, you know it when it's there. I think it's just one of those things. He says, I know love, and I'm going to try to express that love in verse. Because what do poets do but that? We try to express what's in here, out here, in verse. It says, loving in truth, I in fain in verse my love to show. Okay, so then he goes on with this thing. He says that the dear she, uppercase she, so it's a specific person, but he's not going to say who it is because you fill in the blank because we're not going to be heavy-handed. The dear she, he says, pleasure might cause her read. First, back up. She might take some pleasure of my pain. Okay, so the modern day equivalent to this is like maybe you have Instagram, you got Facebook, whatever, and you break up with somebody. What do? You know, they're gonna go check you out and be like, what is he doing? What's she doing? You know, it's kind of a little thing. You go see what they're doing, right? Well, it's just like that. If I write this down, she's not with me, but maybe just to spite me, just to find some pleasure in my pain, she'll come here and read it. And if she reads it for pleasure, that might cause her to read. And if she reads it, that might cause her to know. And knowledge might pity win, and pity grace obtain. Wow. So he's like, it's kind of a trap for me. So everybody's curious. I'll lure her here with curiosity. And then when she reads the depth of my sorrow, she'll know. She'll fully understand. She'll be seeking pleasure, but she'll fully understand my woe and my pain. And that might cause her pity. And in that pity, I might win her grace back. Wow. I want you to know that is a very intense, like a rhetorical device called parapraxis. And it's where you repeat the end of the previous clause in the beginning of the next clause. Look, she might take some pleasure of my pain. Pleasure might cause her read. Reading might make her know. Knowledge might her pity win. Pity might grace. See that? It's awesome. That's great, man. Okay. And it works because it reinforces this series that we're going on. Oh, knowledge. Oh, pity. Oh, pain. Yeah. All right. So this is an Italian sonnet because look, show, pain, know, obtain, woe, entertain, flow. Actually, this one is written in let me see, spite right up. This one's written in the Shakespearean structure, which is odd because he writes in mostly Petrarchs. But anyway, in this one, in the very beginning, we set out the problem. I want her to feel, I want to fall back in grace with her by these words. And I want to fully describe it. I sought fit to paint the blackest face of woe. Now look, man, you guys, if you've ever been, a heartbreak, it's serious. It's serious. Like there is clinical depression, right? Clinical depression is something else. That's when you're missing chemicals. It's not working up there. But a heartbreak, temporarily, I think can be worse than clinical depression. A heartbreak, you feel like the universe has imploded. Just this feeling, like you're in a submarine underneath the sea, and nothing will ever be good again, and no one will ever love me, and I'll never find anyone, and I'm just, woe is me, right? And it's painful. It builds character, but it is painful. And I recommend any of you do it at least once in your life. Clinical depression is like someone walks in and says, you won the lottery and your mother died. Your response is the same. That's okay. But a heartbreak's different. It's painful. It's a sharp pain. I think clinical depression is a long, just deadening pain. In any event, I sought fit to paint with my words the blackest face of that woe. But it's hard to do. How in the hell do you put down something that intense and painful in words? Words. They're like little squiggles on a page that somehow go into your eyes, into your brain, and are supposed to enlighten this image and then a feeling. Oh, come on, that's a difficult thing, right? But he's a poet, so he's got to do it. He says, studying inventions fine. That means he's studying the words of other poets. Like, okay, I'm going to write this thing. I'm going to do it. Let me go see. I'm going to go read this poet. And he reads them, studies what they said. Okay. And then studies another one, trying to entertain her wits. Oft turning others' leaves. Now, a lot of times you'll see in poems, especially these kind of archaic poems like this, you'll see words abbreviated like that, like oft for often, and they do it to fit the meter. When I was very young, I was like, why do they do that? Oh, it's just for poet. They do it to fit the meter, but also sometimes just for flair, But in this case, oft turn each other's leaves, and oft turn each other's leaves to seed and thence flow. Da, 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 da. And so it fits the meter. If you put often there, it would screw it all up. Okay, so often turning others' leaves. Leaves are like dead trees. Books. Turning others' leaves, others' writing, to see if thence would flow some fresh and fruitful showers upon my sunburned brain. Or how about a massage? Yeah. No, don't touch me. Do not touch me. Sunburn sucks, right? And it's from overexposure. Yeah, a good thing like the sun, that's a great thing, but it's too much of it. So for his brain to be sunburned, I think it's spectacular, but it defies words for me to fully understand it. For me, it's kind of like he tried so hard, because poets and writers are just this way. You'll kill yourself trying to do it. I wouldn't wish it on a dog. I'm serious. I told my daughter, you can be anything except a teacher or a writer. I wouldn't wish it on a dog. Yeah, go sit in a room alone for 8 hours a day, obsessing about words that probably no one will ever read. And if they do read them, they won't understand. And if they do understand, it won't affect them in the way you want it to be. It's a fool's errand. But I think people who do it, I don't know, they're infected with some sort of demon or something, because you do it because you have to. There's no other option. You just have to. It's just burning inside of you, and you got to get it out. And I wouldn't wish it on a dog, but nonetheless, he says this: I split my head open and bore my brains to the other poet's work, to all these other words, hoping that they would come in there. And from being open too long, it's sunburned, and now it hurts. It stings inside there. Ow. It's tender to the touch and feel. And then here we begin. But words came halting forth, wanting inventions stay. That's the difference between folk art and high art. And that's the difference between folk art is unlearned people, people who have not gone to Juilliard, people who have not been to school for your art, people who just feel it and do it. Art is high art. This is Michelangelo. Here he's trying to say that I read so many other poets' words that their words began to stay. And it was their words, not mine. It wasn't my songs. It was the idea of a poem, not the poem that I wanted to write. That's intense, you guys. Wanting invention stay. Invention, nature's child. So that would be personification. Invention is nature's child. Fled stepdame studies blows. And others' feet still seemed strangers in my way. Yeah. So look at the pun there. Feet, others' feet. What's a foot? It's a metrical unit, right? It's either iambic or trochaic or whatever. And so it's a pun used in two senses. And others' feet still seemed but strangers in my way. Yeah. There's two ways, like there's feet, there's actual feet, like get out of my way, and also the feet of the poem. Pretty cool. And then, thus great with child to speak. What does it mean when a woman is with child? El pregio, preggers, means she's pregnant. So he is pregnant with this thing to say. Yeah, he's pregnant with it. And we all know pregnancy can only end with some kind of, expelling, I guess you could say. So he has to get it out. And he sits down in his helpless throes. He's hearing all the words of other people, of people who say, this is how a poem should be, and this is how you should write, and these are the words you should use, and how do I express this feeling that I feel, and all that kind of stuff. And he's biting his truant pen. Why is it truant? Because it's absent. He hasn't been writing. He's been studying. Biting my truant pen and beating myself for spite. Not good for a headache, by the way. Fool, said my muse, look in thy heart and write. What is a muse? Goddesses. And they come and inspire artists and poets. And from that, we have the idea of a muse, which is usually a woman who inspires, usually a man. I'm not being chauvinistic. It's just inspires a poet or a artist or a musician or something to do great work. Usually a very beautiful woman who is there as inspiration. You might say Zelda was Fitzgerald's muse, kind of. So anyway, but I take it even further than that. It's not a woman. It's not Greek goddesses. It's a natural force. Like, for example, rappers. Rappers have this thing called flow state, but they didn't make it up. Flow state is a real thing. And I know that you guys have felt it at least once or twice. If you're in, you're in baseball. Okay, baseball. Man, you hit that ball, that damn ball is coming so fast at you, especially when you get into high school baseball or that ball, even women's softball, man, they can throw that thing like 95 miles an hour. And if you've ever been to the batting cage and tried to hit that, you have to start your swing before it even leaves the person's hand. It's crazy. It's an outrageous prospect to do. How do you do it then? Well, I would say it's through a flow state. I would say it is some kind of Zen moment. It's being in the groove. Rappers say they feel it when they get on a roll, you know, pop up, and they're rapping and they're really rhyming well and saying, you know, putting their words together, and they just get on this roll and just keep going. That's flow. They call it flow. But it comes from flow state. And you might think of a gymnast in a great routine. You might think of anyone who does any kind of art like karate. Bruce Lee, he says, all karate is meant to be forgotten. What he means is you don't in the moment be like, okay, he's throwing this kind of punch, so I'm going to use, I'm going to go like this. It comes from muscle memory, you feel it, and that might be considered a flow state. So for artists, and this is how you know, I think, when you've written something good and something true, when you finish writing it, you realize two things. It wrote itself, and you're not in it. Most new writers write about themselves. It's what you know best. But when you write something really valuable, you realize it comes like the birds sing, and you're in that groove, that flow state. And it's the most beautiful feeling in the world. It's like a runner's high, kind of. And that's what he says here in the end. His muse to him says, fool, look in thy heart and write. And you got to remember, writers write. That's what they do. Writers don't research or think or all that. Writers write words. So the definition of a writer is someone who wrote today. So sit down and write. Put your fingers against the keys and start writing. And from that flow comes the real thing. Here's my mom. She's the most beautiful person I've ever seen. She's gorgeous and all that. And she married a bunch of assholes. And I asked her, I said, you know, like what, why, how, well. And so she told me, what she told me was crazy. She said, you know, type A, aggressive men, they were the only ones brave enough to come talk to me. Where are the nice guys in that? They were being too nice. They're being too nice. So this is the moment you look back, it's a lament. You look back on your life, and you know, I've told you this before, but it's the when you regret something later in your life, it's not going to be that you failed. You'll regret not trying. I've got a good friend who plays ukulele in a little band for at old folks' homes, which is crazy to say. But he says, Colin, you go to those old folks' homes and you talk to these people, and they all speak with one voice and say the exact same thing. Tell me. He says, they say, whatever you want to do, whatever it is that's in your heart, burning desire that you need to go do it. Do it now, do it today, do it without delay, do it without excuse. Don't tell me the 17 reasons why you can't. Do it. Go freaking do it. That's great advice. You don't want to put yourself in danger. You don't want to hurt other people, all that. You don't want to like suddenly quit school and be destitute the rest of your life. You don't want to do any of that. But it's more like, if you can, and if you're at the moment and you want to travel to Europe, do it. You know, because tomorrow is a dream. Yesterday's a dream. Tomorrow's a lie, I say. So here we go. He says, oh, I might. Unhappy word, might. Might is an unhappy word. I might have. Oh, me. So you can feel his woe. Oh, I might. Oh, unhappy word. Oh, me. I might. And then would not or could not see my bliss. That's like a really high level form of repetition. Would not, could not. And then would not or could not see my bliss. He didn't realize the happiness that he'd hoped. You know, I had my dad told me one time, he said, Colin, the saddest day of your life, you know what that is? I said, what? He said, it's the day it never happened. It's like, you know, you're just hoping for something to happen, and like you're trying to go after something, maybe happiness, and you realize one day that it just didn't happen. Ouch. But we see it here. I could, if I had done, but I can't see, happiness didn't come, you know. Till now, since that moment, till now, I've been wrapped in a most infernal night, into darkness, and juxtaposed with, I find how heavenly day, wretch, I miss. So he's describing himself like a Gollum figure, down in some cave somewhere, wrapped in darkness of his depression, and he's seeking the light, but he can't find it. He's missed it since that day. Heart tore itself in two. But he wants you to know, reader, he wants you to know it wasn't someone else's fault. There was no beautiful prince that came in and stole Helen away from him. No. There was no force, no fraud, more repetition, no force, no fraud. Robbed me of your delight. No one else, not even fortune. Uppercase F, as if the goddess or the god Fortunato, fortune, but not even fortune. No metaphysical fortune, no coincidence, nothing, none of that. Nor fortune of thy fortune, author is. It was all my doing. It was all me, you know. Jimmy Buffett might say, hell, I think it was my own damn fault. It was my fault. And I'm the one that screwed up. Well, how did you screw up? He says, but to myself did give the blow. While too much wit, forsooth, so troubled me, then I respects for both our sakes must show. Man, if you look back at the personal pronouns, I, me, myself, thy, he's like, it's me. He's really, have you ever known someone who's very, very hard on themselves? Like just makes one little, oh, I screwed it up. Oh God, I dropped it. Oh, it was me. Yeah, not devolve into that, but just, man, I mean, I think you just have to kind of let up on yourself a little bit. But he's just really beating himself. I'm like that too, man. It's mostly when I think I hurt someone else's feelings, and I'll just like, oh, did you think I meant like this when I said that? I didn't mean that. Oh no, I meant that. Oh, did I? It's existential, right? You know, most of it's right in your mind. But anyway, he says, I did this to myself. To myself did give the blow. Bam. So what did you do? He says, you know, guys, ladies, I don't know. For whatever reason, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's proper. I'm not saying it's, I'm just saying that for whatever reason, boys, guys, men are for some reason expected to ask girls to the dance, ask girls on a date, say hi to girls, go cross the bar and go talk to ask the girl to dance, make the first move, reach for her hand, ask her to marry him. And that's a lot of pressure. Women and girls and all that, to hell with whatever they're supposed to have. And you want to say hi, you want to go get some coffee? Let's do it. But boys, it's kind of beat into your brain. You got to do this. You got to do this. But, you know, it's very difficult. It's very hard. It takes incredible self-confidence to cross a room and go, hi, I was noticing you from, you know, the other side of the room. Would you like to dance? My God, what if she says no? I mean, then what? You're just like, oh, just go back. I mean, it's the scariest thing ever. And then, you know, like this whole thing about leaning in, you're supposed to lean in for the kiss or whatever. Well, God, what if she doesn't want you to? What, you know? And so what do? We try to be nice. Try to be the nice guy. We try to be the good guy. And a lot of times that gets us absolutely nowhere, right? So this is back to that idea that you have to know. I mean, life's about moments. the person you marry will determine a great, vast amount of the happiness that you'll feel. I mean, you guys, divorces are horrible, you know, especially if kids are involved. Living with someone that you can't stand, living in an abusive relationship, living in a screaming relationship, living in, I mean, it's horror. And the horror lives where you live. So probably one of the biggest decisions, one of the biggest things you'll ever do in your life is find the one, right? But you'll sit at home at night for hours studying calculus, but you won't walk across a bar and say hi to a girl. That calculus is not as important as, I don't know, you probably ought to go say hi to her, you know? Coffee bar. It's a metaphor, you know? But I think you just need to do it. You just need to ask, hey, and you need to be, you know, and guys, no means no always and forever, right? But dadgummit, if you never metaphorically ask, then how will you ever know? And that's what we're seeing right here. You beat yourself up for the rest of your life over stuff like that, right? And I used to be, my mom told me, she said, hey, you know, Colin, you're going to marry someone you date. Yeah? What does she mean by that? I don't know what she meant. But what I'm trying to say is that you probably ought to date a lot of people before you marry one. How do you know she's the right one? How do you know? I mean, you're going to make a contract with a person for life to share a bank account and a kitchen and really not have any frame of reference about it? So in this writer's life, this moment came. And because he was trying to be the nice guy, trying to be the good guy, trying to be the friend, he made the wrong choice. And in the end here, he says, oh, punished eyes, that had I been more foolish or more wise. He says, I should have just known that was one of my moments and approached this with reckless abandon and said, yes, or been wise enough to do the same. Instead, he let prudence carry the day. We have these big windows out there in my living room, and they're real high, like real tall. And I don't think the builders of this house meant it, but it frames the moon at like most times of the year. It frames the moon just perfectly. So we can sit on our couch and look at the moon. And just last night, Wendy said, oh my God, and I looked up, you know, and there's this just glowing orange October moon just right outside, and it's almost full. And I'm just sitting there looking at this thing on the couch going, man, you know, and then here it is. Here's Sidney's poem. Ready? With how sad steps, O moon, thou climbest the skies, how silently and with how wan face. What? It be that even in heavenly place, that busy archer his sharp arrows tries? Sure, if that long with love acquainted eyes can judge of love, thou feelest a lover's case. I read it in thy looks, thy languished grace. To me, that feel the like, thy state descries. Then even of fellowship, O moon, tell me, is constant love deemed there, but one of wit? Are beauties there as proud as here they be? Do they above love to be loved? And yet those lovers scorn whom that love doth possess. Do they call virtue there ungratefulness? Wow, man. So he looks up at the moon and like, what color would you say the moon is? So my point is, when we look at the moon, most people look at the moon and it's not like a super happy thing. Oh, hi, how are you, moon? It's more dark and more wanting and longing. in Romeo and Juliet, she says, swear not by the moon, oh, inconstant moon, because it goes through phases. It's fickle. It has constantly changing faces and looks to it. And here's what he says. He looks up at the moon and he says, oh, with what sad steps, like literal steps, oh moon, thou climbest the skies. Now I want to tell you, this is a technique called apostrophe. God, your class goes fast. Okay, so there was this AP test many years ago where they asked them to write a poem. It was a poem. Respond to this poem and describe how apostrophe is used to develop meaning. Well, most of them didn't know what apostrophe was, so they described how the punctuation mark, the apostrophe, developed meaning. I'm sorry. Developed meaning. And that was not it at all. So everything hinged on that one word. Apostrophe means addressing someone or something that is not present, or like a personification type of force, like ode to the west wind would be an apostrophe to the west wind. In this case, it's an apostrophe to the moon. And also he personifies the moon, what sad steps you're moving, but also how silently you move, and with how wan a face. So it's pale. It's a pale face, a sorrowful face. And if you've ever known anyone like sad or depressed or whatever, they have this kind of face. It's sort of like, it's not, you're not angry and you're not sad, you're not happy, and you're not like sardonic. You just kind of just blank. He says, I see that look in you, moon. He says, how though? How can you be a desperate lover that's been rejected like me? And you're in heaven. You're in the heavens. And how? How are you? Is that busy archer, the Cupid? Is that busy archer up there too? And did you get shot with his arrow? Ah, you did. I see it. I see it in your eyes. My long acquainted eyes to the pain of love sees it in you. And I can judge that you feel the lover's case, moon. So then he says, we are kindred spirits. We're kindred spirits. But since you're in heaven and I'm down here, I have some questions for you. First, before we do that, I want to tell you one thing. There was Plato and then Aristotle. And Aristotle was Plato's student, but they had completely different philosophies. Plato was a idealist. He thought that there was this realm of ideals, like for every pencil, there's a perfect pencil. For every circle, there's a perfect circle. And Aristotle was an empiricist. And that means of this world, a realist. Aristotle has this philosophy that the Catholic Church clung to and stuck by it forever and 10 days. It goes like this. God is a perfect being. God created the universe. And so the universe is necessarily perfect. So all the stars and anything in the sky, perfect spheres, perfectly round. The entire universe moves in perfect circles, no ovals, no ellipses, nothing, perfect circles. The earth is clearly not perfect though. How did it get that way? The fall of man. Because of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, it threw all of this into a state of imperfection. And that imperfection lasts from the surface of the earth up to the moon, just below the moon. So everything below the moon is imperfect and everything above the moon is perfect. Okay? So when Galileo took his telescope and took it to the cardinals and said, look at the moon. I see it. Well, can't you see the craters and the valleys and the ridges and all that stuff? That's not perfect. It's very flawed, actually. So if you're wrong about that, then you might also be wrong that the earth is at the center of the universe, and it might be the sun, like I said. And they said, Galileo, I do see the craters, and I do see the mountains, and I do see the canyons, but what you don't see is the perfect, invisible, crystalline sphere that covers it all. And we're going to burn you at the stake now. It's pretty much exactly how that conversation went. And Galileo just barely got out of it. He was on house arrest for the rest of his life and died that way. So when he was walked away from that trial, he was heard to say, she moves anyway, meaning the earth moves. But anyway, this brings a whole new context to this, because if everything above the moon is supposed to be perfect, and he looks at the moon and sees the rejected lover's face on the moon, he's like, wait, there too? How can that be? So he says, in constant love deemed there, is constant love deemed there, but one of wit? So constant love would be like one of these people who's always falling in love with someone else, or someone who fell in love with one person, it didn't work out, and then they just can't get over it. Just can't get over it forever. And they might say, that's just a lack of intelligence, or that's just a lack of moving on, or whatever. So is it there, constant love deemed but want of wit? Are beauties there as proud as here they be? So guys, ladies, you've all seen some pretty person and you're like, man, I don't think I'd ever have a chance. Like it's just, she seems to be so proud, so proud and so stuck up. Like she'd never talk to you. But the truth is probably that she's just waiting for you to come talk to her. Say hi. So are beauties there as proud as they are down here? Do lovers scorn? Okay. Now you almost have to have a roadmap to get through this. Do they above love to be loved? And yet those lovers scorn whom that love doth possess. People want what they can't have. So like, I think the princess movies told us that we're going to live happily ever after, right? You find the one, you live happily. So, but what does that even mean? I mean, you think that the feeling of love that you feel when you're on your honeymoon, you think like that lasts for 30 years? As it changes, it grows, it becomes different. It's not love, but it's not that like butterflies, like, oh my God, I'm going to get to see her tonight. Wow. I'm going to get her roses. I'm going to like, it's not that, So what happens is people fall in love and get the love, and then they start looking for those butterflies again. They start looking somewhere else for the next. So love then becomes like a drug. Chasing the dragon, always looking for a fix, So he's saying even up there, does this kind of endless cycle occur?